Isaac and the Builders Chapter 3 War Talk. So me and James handed in our luggage and now we are looking for a compartment that isn't full up. Now to take your attentions away from our young Isaac, things are brewing in the world now. I draw your attention to France Inner in Harry's New York bar. We aim these attentions to the most private booth in the bar. Here sat the current President of America Franklin D. Roosevelt. Here also sat the leader of the Russian Empire Joseph Vissarionovich Stalin. And of course there sat their Commonwealth's representative Stanley Baldwin, who was there to speak for the King and Queen of England as well as the Commonwealth King George VI and Queen Elizabeth. The Commonwealth is currently the sole superpower of the world. Next is time to introduce the German up-and-comer Adolf Hitler and his associates from Italy and Japan, as well as other dignitaries and religious leaders of the Middle East. First Hitler started the talking and he said, "These people claim they have God's blessing to rape our economies purely because they began the business of banking to all the world as it yet is." Now Stanley Baldwin chimed in with the next rebuttal. "Do you deny that the Jewish banking system has improved the world for the better considering they made a free space for commerce, investment and credit?" Hitler replied, "How can you verify these assertions if our credit is calculated in private?" Now Stalin interjects, "There is precedence for us to publicly audit our own accounts. At the very least we want incoming and outgoing receipts, and yes, we understand that the privacy agreements should still stand." Now a representative of the remaining European monarchy and governments, Leon Blum, says, "So you want the scraps sent our way to be scooped up?" And now the Franklin D. Roosevelt interjects, Here, free trade should be king. Stop these monopolies." So Hitler once again chimes in, "Then the only option is mutual destructive competition. It is the only option for the people in Germany. We can't be expected to pay back our debts if the banks can't bail us out. They rape out of us all we have. Might can still be king," he says to punctuate his point. Franklin D. Roosevelt interrupts, "We don't want any part of another world war unless all machines of yours are mutually disclosed. If it is to be mutual, let it be. We know you have been doing dealings with the false ones, so share all of it and come forth with the political argument so we can all invest or divest." So Hitler and Italy's Benito Mussolini as well as Emperor of Japan Hirohito make their case first. Their argument is as follows: respect is to be given to Christ and the Church should spread, but the Jews should pay for the murder of Jesus and should leave back to the Holy Land and stay there. America and the leaders of the free world and sovereign Europe want no part of this movement and want to remain as free trade states in the industrial era. But the Commonwealth is appalled by this motion and agree to mutual war, but the agreement has to be made that the affair is truly mutual. They then demand that all small arm technologies have to be shared. All parties at this summit agree on this. So the fully automatic weapon program is shared to all parties, and this is a unanimous across the board. But we should note that in these proceedings was the birth of a massive schism in the free world: those who recognize the capitalist USA as the true free world and those who say Russia the communist to be. So this meeting is a huge crossroad for the world. The Commonwealth agrees to war. And Hitler declares that the Commonwealth and the communists to be an affront to the Axis war machine and reluctantly agree that the free capitalist world is a realm for future geopolitical exceptions and dealings to be made. Because secretly Hitler idolizes the US. And now America declares themselves as a free market for warfare manufacturing contracts to be signed to any who are the highest bidding conglomerates. Their logic is, if you want to kill each other, buy the bullets from us. And this is the birth of the military-industrial complex. While the Russian communists offer dealings for non-violent tech because Jesus asked the Communist Party to never trade in weaponry. They sell bandages, fabrics, winter clothing. This is the reason why in your modern era it is always made in China. So there are four parties at the end of this meeting. The capitalists sell you the gun that you shoot your foot with. The communist monopolizing manufacturing and essential goods the world over. Next is the most dangerous dictatorship the world has ever seen, the Axis. And the end of a era, the Commonwealth, blue-blooded classist tyrannical lobster redcoats. The end of the false one's political monopoly of human resources, the end of the biggest and longest fire sale. The pagan idols can't rule a devoted kingdom, and you will see that this is true. Now back to me and James. We are still looking for a compartment. And right ahead of us in the hallway, moving towards the front of the airship, was a bunch of bullies heckling a young Aboriginal girl. Her name is Bindi. The poor girl was staring at her feet with fear in her composure. The boys were shoving her and they were telling her, "Go back to do chores and leave us boys do the heavy lifting." These awful boys were obviously brother of the ages of 13, 14 and 15. Their names were as follows: youngest to oldest: Donald Craven, Jack Craven and Alex Craven. My brother James was the first to come to the girl Bindi's rescue. He said, "What heavy lifting are you even capable of?" Short stack Jack, because he is very short for his age. This rebuttal made me nervous because I am even smaller for my age. At this, Alex puffed up his chest and shoved James, who didn't move an inch. James replied by raising his gloved hand that had a geometric circle embroidered onto it. I had never seen the glove before in my life. Alex raised his own gloved hand and his other two brothers ran away. But in a flash a whip appeared in his hand, then it cracked, followed by another flash, and from thin air a shield appeared in James's hand also, so the whip stopped short. Now James threw his bronze shield and it bounced hard off of Alex's head, who crumpled. At this I went into shock. This to me seemed to be magic. It totally blew me away. Now the little Bindi looked at us both with tears in her eyes and said thank you, and then she ran away. Now James realized I was in a shocked state. So he walked me to an empty compartment. And slowly he explained. The school we are going to teaches alchemical practice. You will learn to transmute. And then he started to pat me firmly on the back until the point that I could speak again. I said wow, it was all I could muster. Now at the compartment door opened and a charismatic-looking kid poked his head in. His name was Luke. He was lanky but muscular and a little over average height. I felt sprightly intimidated. James is of average height and I am very short, but me and James always have a strength and toughness advantage. Other boys can't match our exceeding strength, toughness and backbone. But I still get nervous and flustered easily. James doesn't. Luke looked at James and said, "There you are. I thought you might be here. I saw Alex." So James looked at me and said, "I will see you when we get to the airfield. Collect yourself, Isaac. Now I need to excuse myself. Take deep breaths. You will be okay." At his leave and his words I found comfort and exhaled long. I didn't realize my lungs were so full of air. Next I will tell you how I met my greatest friend, and his name is David Davis. He poked his head in and he seemed startled slightly. He looked at me and said, "Aren't you way too little to be of age?" I laughed and said, "I am of age." So he smiled and sat across from me. He was very tall and muscular. Next he said, "First year?" I said, "Yep," and to my surprise he said, "Me too." He had an infectious smile and his sharp canine teeth showed. Then he continued, "Do you think there is a food and drink compartment on this train?" I said. James said there would be. So David said, "Cool, I'll be back. So you want me to get something for you?" I then said I'll be okay. Then David insisted, so I said a meat pie would be nice. 10 minutes passed and David entered the compartment again. So we both started talking about where our home is, in what suburb, city or town. I told him I live in Forestville, New South Wales, and he said he lives in Parkway Drive, Melbourne. Then David said, "I'm still hungry." And I interrupted, "You better not fill up on the trip," because James had told me that there is a feast tonight at Washington Rock, the school's first-term feast. He then talked excitedly about what he was hopeful that they would serve, and I joined in. Food has always been the most joyful thing in life. To me nothing else has ever held a candle to food, glorious food. So we just chatted about our favorite radio stations and shows. Then we went on to the rugby league subject. My favorite team was North Sydney Bears. His favorite was the eastern suburbs Sydney Roosters. And then we argued who is the best half-back. So we did for a while, but then over the intercom a lady said, "We are preparing for landing. Use your seat harness." We did. So we got a little nervous with the landing turbulence, and then the airship stopped shaking and we were landed. We all filed 2 by 2 to the exit slowly, and James was waiting with Luke by the exit. James gave me a firm pat on the back and I followed him to the bus terminal. We boarded the bus joking and boastful like boys do. And then about 1 hour later we ended up at a military-style group of lodges, and then a man very gruff-looking with a booming voice said, "Newcomers this way." His name was Mr. Redding and he is the drill sergeant. His forte is fitness and discipline. He led us to the middle of the hall. There was 5 large tables, 1 circular table in the middle, and 5 long tables all around the middle table. We will continue the feast in the next chapter.